Greetings, Moody Theological Seminary Greek geeks. Welcome to week 6 of our 7-week course on Greek syntax and exegetical method. Charis Himen, Kai Rene. Again, grace to you and peace. Trust you're maintaining that ever-present, solid, self-disciplined study schedule in that you're slowly mastering the material. Well, another motivating memo this week from Heinrich Blitzer in his book, Light on the Path. That's a great devotional. Has devotionals in Greek and Hebrew each day with an English translation. But in writing that, he says, the more a theologian detaches himself from the basic Hebrew and Greek text of the Holy Scriptures, the more he detaches himself from the source of real theology. And real theology is a fountain of a fruitful and blessed ministry. I trust as we got introduced to biblical theology last week that you've thought much about that you're more interested in the theology coming out of the text and imposing theological categories on the text. Everything should be objective and exegetical in nature. Well, having said that, we're moving into week 6 this week, looking at the infinitive, participles, application, ethics, and preaching. What it's all about, sort of your whole purpose for doing all this, I suppose. Well, your objectives are 3 this week: to recognize the use of the infinitive and the participle. Then you should be able to outline 1 Thessalonians 4, 1-8 in order to develop a sermon with an application from it, or applications as the case may be. And you should be able to discuss the grammar, syntax, semantics, and syntax of Romans 15:13, Ephesians 2:1-10, and Acts 13:26-31, and include a potential ethical application and or sermonic idea for each of these. You're reading this week in Wallace, in his large book there, is 587-611, dealing with infinitives, and 612-55. 655, dealing with participles. Remember the issues with participles. They have tense in the sense of type of action, but then their time of action is determined by their relationship to the main verb. So keep all that. In interpreting the New Testament, you're looking at chapter 13, and I just want to touch on a couple things there. In particular, thinking about applications and all of this. Number 1, your application should come from what the passage says. Don't worry about being devotional. Don't worry about anything except bringing out of the passage what it says and making the relevant application. Do not ever allegorize a passage to get application. If you're doing that, you haven't studied and understood the passage well enough. Your authority as a preacher is going to come from your accurate handling of the text. Paul admonished Timothy that he needed to rightly divide or accurately handle the word of truth. And that's what you need to do. Meaning in the passage comes from your exegesis of the passage. Not you're massaging it to get some idea that you can make some fuzzy application, but you want good exegesis. You want to understand the meaning of the passage. You move from that to the challenge of the significance of that meaning. That is the theology of the passage, the biblical theology. Remember, not systematic. As important as systematic theology is, and as good a grid and overall understanding as that may give us, systematic theology, good systematic theology, is based on solid biblical theology. So be sure you're going back to biblical theology, and then as you come down the relevance of that theology, that's where you're making your application. So you're going from exegesis, the meaning of the passage, to theology, the significance of the passage, to relevance, the application of the passage. So read through this chapter of Bach and Fanning carefully. And again, as in all the others, be sure you're understanding it well. Again, I trust you picked up on the difference between systematic theology and biblical theology last week, and that you're sold, if you would, on the importance of a foundation built on biblical theology from each passage of Scripture. Well, then you've got the last 2 chapters in Campbell this week to read as well. And this week you're reading the perfect and pluperfect tense forms. You're wrapping that up, and more participles. And then I would encourage you to read that concluding postscript. It's not listed here as needing to be read, but I always read the preface and the introductions and the postscripts to books. There's always good material there. And sometimes it'll help you to just pull it together. So take some time to read that as well. We've got some work in Wallace and Edwards this week, chapters 17 through 19. No more work than normal, but be sure to give attention to those. Assignment 6.1 is your sermon outline for 1 Thessalonians 4:1-8. This should come reasonably easy if you've been doing all your work through the 7 weeks, now in the 6 weeks of the course. And for that, you want a sermon outline on 1 page on the topic of knowing the will of God in dating based on 1 Thessalonians 4:1-8. It includes at least 1 application for the message. This outline should emerge from your structural exegetical outline, but with homiletic, not just exegetical, communicative purposes. So do give due attention to that. Remember, you're not giving the exegetical outline, although it should reflect correct exegesis of the passage. You should have a good homiletical outline that people could walk away with and yet come back to the passage and explain what the passage is about. Well, your workbook this week is, as I said, from Chapter 17, questions 1 and 2, Chapters 18, questions 14 through 25, Chapter 19, questions 10 through 18, based on these passages of Scripture. Again, you know the process for those, so I won't belabor that. One discussion this week, your translation of the passages, Romans 15:13, Ephesians 2:1-10, Acts 13:26-31. Again, roughly 350 words in your translation. And include 1 application from 1 of the passages, roughly 25 words. You may do more if you have time, or it can be concise, but you only need to do 1 application. It's always good, though, to get more practice in while you can. After posting your translation, comment on translation of at least 2 other students' translations as well. And what follows the normal stuff about what you should be finding in each week. A reminder on discussion boards again, and in particular, what I'm looking for in your responses: compliment good insights of your peers, provide kind, constructive critique for how they could strengthen their post in your view, and third, give them a good open-ended question to think about with regard to their post. Well, that's it for week 6. I think that pretty well covers it. Looking forward to your work, and now we'll soon be moving into our last week where you'll pull it all together.